Well, I know you've been very active in that area as well, trying to establish some degree of responsibility upon the part of corporate America, because it does have its effect upon everyone.
It really does, and I think people saw Enron and thought, well, this is an aberration, this is not commonplace, but now with WorldCom and some of the others, I think people realize how widespread this is, and this just isn't one or two bad apples. This is a corporate culture of inflated profits, of incentives to cut corners, and of conflicts of interest which occur between the accounting firms that do the audits and represent the status of the company, and the fact that they also do business consulting and make much more money from business consulting than they do from the audits. And so I think we now have in place a system that would severely restrict this conflict of interest, and that you would not be able to freely perform consulting services and audit services for the same company.
One aspect of all this, it's having its effect upon the small businessman as well, because the manipulations that take place within a particular company has certainly its effect upon, that's very widespread, and have its effect upon the small businessman, who are the lifeblood of America.
Well, it's true, and that's one of the things that we've been very concerned about, is how do we protect the small guy when the market distortions caused by the big guys ripple through the economy, affect the availability of credit, affect interest rates, all of those types of things. And I think that that's part of the reason why there's such a strong feeling that there has to be this corporate responsibility, because it's distorting the marketplace. The notion of profitability at certain big firms is drawing capital that might otherwise go into small, aggressive, and very competitive and very efficient firms. But you're reading profit reports that suggest that, oh no, this big company X is where you ought to invest your money.
Perhaps some of the motivation is the gyrations of the market itself and the control of the marketplace. Really, you have a situation right now where you have a head of the SEC who has had some form of connections that might condition his thinking.
Well, I think that's very true, and it is problematic. It makes people a little nervous as to whether or not we're getting the most aggressive prosecution and investigation through the SEC.
The fox watching the chicken coop, huh?
Pretty much. Now, he maintains that he can do the job, and apparently as a Bush nominee, they're going to give him that opportunity. But I think there is a lot of concern that Mr. Pitt is not the right person in the situation. He's made some comments that people found troubling. One particularly about a kinder, gentler SEC, I think had people wondering. I said, I don't think anyone wants a kinder, gentler watchdog, and that's what the SEC is supposed to be.
But the other point is the fact that they're trying to make the SEC a cabinet position today.
Yeah, I think too much politicization is not a good idea. It seems to me that what we need is more independence and autonomy and less relationship to the political sphere, which is why the provisions in the Sarbanes bill, I think, are very helpful to create a truly independent audit oversight board that can function largely. I mean, in this town, you can't get away from politics, but largely outside the realm of politics.
Congressman, I have to cut away from you for just a moment for our local stations, and we'll be back to you right after that.
That'd be great.
I'm a proud member of the Communications Workers of America, the Union for the Information Age. You may not know it, but you're in touch with CWA every day. CWA members keep people talking, reading, watching, and learning. In telecommunications, wireless, and high-tech, we make sure you stay connected. Reporters and other CWA members at newspapers across the country and CWA technicians at the major television and radio networks keep the information coming loud and clear. At the Government Printing Office in Washington, D.C., we publish the Congressional Record and get it online every day. Research scientists and employees at major universities are part of CWA too. We're all CWA, the union for employees and professionals in the information industry. To learn more about CWA, visit our website at www.cwa-union.org. A message from CWA, the Communications Workers of America.
We've been talking to Congressman Albert Wynn, Democrat from Virginia.
Maryland.
Maryland, excuse me. Oh, isn't that terrible here?
Well, we're all Washington metropolitan area. So.
That's right. Congressman, it's good to have you here.
It's a pleasure. I'm enjoying it.
Tell me, on the overall question of health care, are we adequately addressing that problem? Prescription drugs is one thing, but you have a situation that there are a great many people in this country today who are not covered by insurance and can't afford the insurance that is available to them. What are we doing about that?
Well, you're absolutely right. It is a major problem facing our country today. One of my political favorites, Lyndon Johnson, talked about the Great Society. And it seems to me that today a great society ought to include health insurance for all Americans. Right now we have 40 million Americans that don't have health insurance, and we need to do something about it. It has major ramifications, not only for individual families, but also for small businesses who can't afford to provide health insurance on the job, and so they are hindered in terms of their prosperity when they try to do it, and it cuts into their profit margins, or their failure to do it means they have more absenteeism and other kinds of problems. So health insurance is a big issue. I've been working on the problem. I have a bipartisan bill that I'm co-sponsoring with Kay Granger of Texas. It is designed to provide a prepaid refundable tax credit for all Americans with incomes up to $60,000 a year. And it's designed to enable them to go out in the marketplace and purchase insurance. This prepaid refundable tax credit would come to the family at the beginning of the year. For an individual, it would be about $1,000. For a family of four, about $3,000. Now, this doesn't make health insurance free. It basically says if you're an individual, you now have $1,000 with which to purchase health insurance, and you're required to use it for that purpose, obviously, and there are mechanisms to monitor that. So it's not a cash check, but it is a voucher that will enable you to go out and offset that cost. That would solve the problem for over 20 million of the uninsured because they could go out in the marketplace and find a policy that works for them. The virtue of this tax credit approach is that it's much more generous than the one the president has been talking about, because generally we Democrats don't like the tax credits. But the one that we've devised, I think, works because it is prepaid, so you get it up front. It also works because it's more generous, as I said, a lot more generous than the president's. It costs more, but I think that's what a great society does, is pay for the things that are important. But one of the virtues would be, if you were concerned about mental health, then you could get a policy that provided mental health coverage. If you were young and relatively healthy, you could get a bare bones policy that didn't cost as much. Or if you needed eye care or dental or whatever fit you or your family's needs, you could find it on the marketplace. And we did a study to find out if policies were available, and we found, number one, policies are available, but then again, the law of supply and demand suggests that armed with this kind of money, that it would help create a market for modestly priced or moderately priced health insurance. So we think this is a movement in the right direction, and we're now working on some Senate sponsors to help us build momentum.
Great. The one point that I think the public is concerned about is the fact that during the Clinton administration, the Democrats did propose the idea of universal health insurance. In fact, our senator from New York was severely criticized for doing something like that. Yet I think that people don't realize that regardless of who pays for it, the cost is still there. In other words, the fact is that people who don't have health insurance go to an emergency room.
That's right.
And that costs somebody something. It costs the taxpayer.
Sure, it costs the taxpayers millions of dollars, because by the time you get to the emergency room, you're very sick. And that means you need much more expensive care, many more tests, more expensive drugs. All of that is compounded when people don't have health care. One of the virtues of the plan that I'm advocating is that it would enable people to get primary care at an earlier point in life, so that you would not get as sick, so that problems could be diagnosed, high blood pressure, diabetes, these types of illnesses could be diagnosed at an earlier stage when the care is much cheaper, rather than when they reach a chronic stage and the care is much more expensive.